Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss Is This Thing On? Starring Will Arnett, Laura Dern, Andra Day. Starring and written and directed by Bradley Cooper. Now, before I get into this movie, yes, I saw it in theaters, and I was going to do this movie, but I was kind of afraid because it was Christmas time and it was going to be packed like crazy. So, but I did do some other ones that weren't as bad. But this one was like every showing was bad after bad after bad after bad. And for that reason alone, I had to wait until it came out on streaming. So let's just. But will this be as good as A Star is Born or Maestro? Let's get into this movie and find out. We open with the Chinese tiger being at a kid's place, a meeting place at the gym at their school with their parents, and we see Alex Novak, played by Will Arnett, looking bored as he's unhappy with his marriage with Tess, played by Laura Dern. And next thing you know, they decide to call off the marriage while their sons Felix and Jude are worried about them, and they meet up with their friends Christine, played by Andra Day, and her husband named Balls, played by the movie's star, writer, and director Bradley Cooper. While he drops oat milk on the floor, and Alex and Tess grab a cookie that makes them high as they eat it at the train station, and Tess gets on the train while Alex believes he forgot something and gets left behind. And I like these characters as they're absolutely hilarious in a dark way, as this is supposed to be a dramedy or something like that, and it's pretty decent for a and it's a pretty decent dark dramedy. Alex goes to a comedy club to get a drink and decides to do stand up comedy, and he jokes about how he's getting a divorce. Now, I've never been married, so I'm not an expert on marriages versus divorces, but it seems kind of odd to joke about your marriage, which is something you shouldn't joke about whatsoever, while he watches every other person, like Jill from for example, making jokes while on stage, and meets Nina as well as other comedians and gets home. And I really liked the shots, as the long shot of Alex making jokes was fantastic. While the shots are great to watch, Felix and Jude stay with Alex while bringing them to his parents, Han and Marilyn, as they learn about the divorce. And later that night, Alex goes back to his apartment and is depressed as he goes to the house while Felix and Jude sleep with Tess, while Alex goes back to the comedy club to tell more jokes about his life, which sounds better than discussing about his marriage versus divorce. And the dialogue works as Will Arnett is a comedian, so why are his jokes not too funny in this? Well, it's kind of a dramedy because the character doesn't know how to be a comedian, which makes perfect sense if you're an actor. Alex meets other comedians and decides to do this on his own time as he buys a new car and shows Tess, Felix, and Jude while he takes the kids to school. And Alex believes Tess is capable of the Olympics as she used to be a volleyball player in the Olympics, as she might sign up for them in a couple of years from now, which is 2028, as she thinks about coaching the volleyball team for the Olympics in the next 2 years. And the performances are very good in this movie, as Alex and Tess comb the boy's hair, as well as Tess, while she believes she has lice, and the boys practicing the song by Queen called Under Pressure as they practice it for half the movie. And I like the chemistry between Alex and Tess, as Will Arnett and Laura Dern are very good, as they're very good together. Tess thinks about whether or not she wants to divorce Alex. Alex makes some more jokes at the comedy club and sees Jill and Nina telling some jokes about, and asks Nina and what's his name? Alex asks Nina to help out at one of the boys' birthday parties at Tess's house, and we get to the birthday party while Christine acts all bitchy to Alex, while Balls is holding one of the dogs, Charlie, who doesn't like being held, excuse me, but he tolerates it, and everybody has some fun at the birthday party until Balls tells Alex something Christine said, as Tess might be sleeping with a different man. And writer, director, and star Bradley Cooper does a good job at telling a dramatic tale of being a stand up comedian. Alex, even though it's like comedy club or something like that. Alex leaves the house to get to the gets to the comedy club. and says he's led to believe after Ball saying Tess is seeing somebody else as he fucks Jill in her apartment. As we move on to his the next day, and Alex sees Felix and Jude saying has his joke book, and they read through it and explains what a radiologist is, and it depresses one of the boys as he gets a call to the night show, and he tries to find a babysitter and asks Tess as she has plans, and eventually gets his parents to watch the boys at the last minute, and the editing could be trimmed down a little bit, like at least 10 minutes, because this movie is a little too long. But don't get me wrong, I'm liking this movie, but not as much as Cooper's A Star is Born and Maestro, which I reviewed both films under Oscar contenders, but surprisingly, this wasn't nominated for an Oscar, which was fine, but so far it's a good film. Tess meets with a friend named Laird, who's played by a former football player named Peyton Manning, about the Olympics for the next 2 years, while Alex goes to his comedy club to perform. And what Alex doesn't realize until Nina says something about Tess being in the audience with Laird while he confesses he missed his wife, and the acting is sometimes painful, even in this scene in particular. Alex and Tess talk it over and have sexual intercourse and smoking cigarettes with one another, excuse me. She asks him questions about did he fuck Jill in his apartment in front of the Aramore, and Tess decides to sleep over at Alex's apartment, and the cinematography is well filmed as this is well made. Alex continues his comedy club and says he and Tess got back together and smoked cigarettes. And while fellow comedians after his show with his fellow comedians after his show anyways, and picks up Tess from volleyball practice. And the score in this scene was oddly placed. Otherwise, the score was overall okay-ish. As we move on to Ball's meeting Alex and Tess at the train station and brings them to Christine and their other friends at a cabin while Ball shaved most of his beard and plays a board game because he has an acting gig coming, and plays a board game, and nighttime comes and Alex is encountered by Balls. As they talk to the point, Balls is thinking of divorcing Christine for reasons, for example, with their son going to college, as he's been unhappy for the longest time, as well as the inspiration from Alex, despite he's back with Tess and wants to start filming things again. And we move on to Christine confessing she hated him because he reminds her of herself and says she had a crush on him at one point in life. And I like the dialogue, as it was well written by Bradley Cooper, Will Arnett, and Mark Chappell, or Chappell, or something like that. Christine announces Tess being asked to join the 2028 Olympics as an assistant coach for the women's volleyball team in America, and Alex and Tess talk about it as he has a photograph of her jumping to hit the ball while playing volleyball. And she gets upset about it as nighttime comes and their friends Jeffrey and Steven get some ice cream while Alex goes to the attic to visit Tess, and they talk about what they don't like about each other and get into an argument until Christine spies on them and makes noises, and Alex gets upset and tells her to mind her own fucking business. And some of this could be in the editing room floor as it goes on for a bit too long. Alex makes comments in the comedy club about how relationships are like vampires sucking your blood out and how much they suck. And the acting by Will Arnett was kind of painful, while Jan watches him yelling at everybody in the audience and tells him to tell a few more jokes next time. As the next day comes and he wakes up to Balls coming to his apartment saying he's got the acting job, and he's ending up not going to divorce Christine after all. And this is a pleasant piece of dialogue by Will Arnett and Bradley Cooper. And he decides to put the frame of the photograph against the wall. And Alex tells Tess he was the one who was unhappy with the marriage and wants to be unhappy together. And she says she'll think about it, and takes a jog and frames a different photo of how unhappy she is, while going to the comedy club to make real jokes and watch Felix and Jude perform under pressure with their classmates, and everybody singing along and the climax made this into a pretty good movie. But how good? Let's talk about it. I'll give this movie a 7.3 out of 10. I like the characters as they're absolutely hilarious in the dramedy kind of way, as this is a pretty decent dark dramedy, as the shots are fantastic while they are great to watch, and the dialogue works as Will Arnett is a comedian. So why are his jokes not too funny? Because the character doesn't know how to be a comedian, which makes perfect sense because he's an actor and comedian at the same time. The performances are very good in this movie, as Will Arnett and Laura Dern are very good together as writer, director, and star. Bradley Cooper does a good job at telling a dramatic tale of being a stand up comedian, and the editing could be trimmed down a little bit, as this is kind of a long movie, as I believe at least 10 minutes could be cut out. But at the end of the day, I like the movie, but not as good as Cooper's version of A Star is Born and Maestro, which I reviewed both films in under Oscar contenders, as surprisingly this wasn't nominated for any Oscars, which was fine with me, but it was a good film. The acting is sometimes painful in awkward situations, and the cinematography was well filmed and it was well made. So I'm giving this a recommendation, but the score was oddly placed in one scene. But overall, the score was okay ish. But I liked the dialogue as it was well written by Bradley Cooper, Will Arnett, and Mark Chappell, as it is a pretty good movie that I recommend people watch once and judge for themselves. So I'd like to thank you guys for returning to Bradley Cooper until he comes up with another idea for a movie. Is this thing on?